I took 2 long trips this summer. One was with my BMW R1200 RS, which is equipped with an Aoocci CarPlay Screen. The other was on my Royal Enfield Himalayan 450, which is equipped with a Garmin. And I can also use my phone mounted there. I have some thoughts about comparing these two devices. I would like to share with you about which one might be better for you, because really it depends on what your use is. So I'll give you my experience with these two devices and share with you my thoughts about which one is better and under which circumstances. Hi, my name's Peter, and I like motorcycles and motorcycle camping. Full disclosure, there's a link for the Aoocci screen in the description below. I'm also sponsored by Onyx Off-Road, which works with CarPlay and Android screens, but you should make purchases based on what works for you. So let me walk you through the pros and cons of each type of device. And what I'm going to show you is that the better device depends on your type of use. Obviously, you don't need either device. You can just navigate with your phone. Or if you're really old school, use a paper map. I live in a small town, so it's not often that I need help finding an address or choosing a route. Even when I go to Vancouver, I know my way around because I lived there for 30 years, and much of that time my job involved driving to lots of different locations. So for me, there's lots of things going on other than finding directions. One of the main reasons for a dedicated screen is that it's waterproof and wired to the bike, so it's going to be on and visible no matter what the weather. Phones today are much more waterproof and weather resistant than they used to be, but still vulnerable. On one backroad trip, I found the rain was triggering actions on my phone screen that made me need to keep resetting the screen display. So let's look at the Garmin. I'm using the Garmin Zumo XT. There's a newer version out, the XT2, which adds some new features, but this isn't a product comparison, so I'm not going to try to give you all the details. I don't think Garmin sells the XT anymore, so if you buy a new one, you're going to get the XT2. There's also some other satellite navigation devices, so you might shop around if you think this is the way for you to go. For the pros, well, the fundamental feature of a GPS device is that it's always connected. It doesn't depend on your phone. It has its own satellite communication, so no matter what happens to your phone, the navigation continues to function. That's why I put it on my adventure bike, so I could import the Idaho BDR route and see where I was even when we were out of range of the cell signals. You expect that on a BDR, but I live in a rural area and I can be out of cell service frequently. Any distance traveling in Canada will take you out of cell phone range for parts of the trip. Of course, you can download maps for offline use for lots of mapping apps, but you need to plan ahead. If you're in the middle of nowhere, for example, and you decide it's time to find a campground, motel, or lunch spot, you're out of luck without a dedicated GPS device. One of the things I most appreciate about my Garmin all the time is that it shows me both my speed and the posted speed limit. When I exceed the speed limit, it puts a red border on my speed. That's particularly helpful when I'm in the US, where speeds are posted in miles per hour and my speedometer reads in kilometers per hour. But I look at this part of the display on every ride because I'm frequently riding along secondary highway that goes in and out of residential areas, so the speed limit changes often. And the built-in database. I've referred to this already, but it's worth repeating. The Garmin Zumo XT has a huge database of resources, so I can always make decisions on the fly when I'm outside of cell coverage. Importing planned routes. It's possible, though not necessarily as easy as I'd like, to import routes. For example, I imported the Idaho BDR route. It's easy to make a wrong turn out in the bush because roads are often not marked. My Garmin always showed me right away when I was off the route. I'll just put in a plug for Onyx Maps here. The Garmin base map has less detail than some of the mapping apps. I like it for following a route, but I don't trust it for exploring, because it doesn't always differentiate between a maintained logging road and an abandoned road. So I found myself in more difficult terrain than I expected on more than one occasion. And the Garmin also has some communication with the phone. Obviously, a CarPlay or Android screen is made specifically to display apps from your phone, so they shine here, but the Garmin still has phone connection and an app interface. The Garmin will show a pop-up for text messages or emails that arrive when I'm riding. It also lets me select music from Apple Music. I don't really care about that, but one time I accidentally left my phone behind at a highway rest stop, and within 2 minutes the Garmin gave me an alert that it had lost contact with the phone, so I knew right away that I needed to turn around and go get it. But there's lots of cons with the Garmin. It has limited functionality. In fact, it's basically a map. There's a lot more that a CarPlay or Android screen can do. My Aoocci comes with front and rear facing cameras, so I can set it to display what's behind me, which is often clearer than my mirrors. I think the new Garmin can also do this with a compatible camera. But the Garmin only displays the Garmin maps that are built in, or you can download some additional ones. There are a world of navigation apps that open up to you with a dedicated CarPlay or Android screen. So let's look at the benefits of a dedicated CarPlay or Android screen. I should mention that some models integrate with BMW's Wonder Wheel or the bike's components. It may be a great way to upgrade your bike if it doesn't have a TFT dash. And there's lots of map options. Almost every map is compatible. Every app producer knows their product needs to be compatible with these screens. I've produced a video on mapping apps and on one specific app that I've used, but there are so many variations that you can find one that meets your specific needs. And there are other functions. Like I said, you can display cameras that are attached to the bike as well as any apps that are compatible, including communication apps like WhatsApp or Spotify for music. You can listen to books, and there are lots of podcast apps. And it has excellent phone communication. My Aoocci app tells me who's calling, so I can decide whether or not it's worth it to try and use the Cardo to talk to them. These devices are constantly expanding as more apps become compatible, but they're not perfect. They're limited by cell signal. This may or may not be a big deal depending on your use. If I had a bike that I was only riding in the city, I think a dedicated screen to mirror my phone would be the way to go. It just does so much more than a dedicated GPS device. If I was only using it for remote exploration, then I might be happy with using it to pair with Onyx. For the Idaho BDR, I downloaded detailed maps of the whole route to my phone because I knew exactly where we would be. On a rough remote route, you might want your phone safely in your pocket so it's protected and at hand if you come off the bike and need to call for help, and you have the benefit of a larger display. But when I'm traveling, I don't always know which route I want to take, and I might want to change my mind at any time. Even on a planned route, I might wonder how far to the next town or junction with gas or food. Even with 1 bar of service, you don't get enough data to keep the map up to date. In my little town, I'm often at the edge of cell service, so many of the map apps don't work well. So for consistent navigation where cell service is unreliable and you don't have plans that can be set in advance, a dedicated GPS is preferable. I hope you found this little comparison helpful. If you want to add an Aoocci screen to your bike, it's a beautiful upgrade and makes the bike a lot more modern, but it's something that you want to use when you have reliable cell service. If you want to explore and not worry about your cell signal, then maybe you want to go with a dedicated GPS. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.